Well, you know, it's a hard act to follow. Brenda did a lot of research and a lot of nice work, and hopefully all that work that she has done, that maybe we can address some of that here, hopefully. I have a lot shorter timeline than she does, but just to go back, and this is before this letter that you have a copy of from Governor Mead on September the 5th there. This was actually an intercepted email that is an internal email that was from Merritt Thomas to Governor Mead having to deal, and this was on June 21st of 2013. So to give you a little background on this email, in 2013, as Brenda talked about, Representative Casper contacted the governor for assistance in trying to get a refugee resettlement program started. And that's when the law student and the professor contacted Merritt to combine forces, if you will, to try to get one started. Wyoming at that time was the only state without a refugee resettlement program. Now, each year the U.S. Department of State contracts with 9 voluntary agencies with over 300 affiliated nationwide services to provide reception and placement services of these refugees. And I do have a list. The 9 contractors are the Church World Service is one. They get a total revenue of $76.1 million. $45.4 million is funded by taxpayers. That's 60% of their budget. The top salary of the person in the Church World Service is $286,000. The Ethiopian Community Development Council has a total revenue of $15.2 million, which the government grants them $14.6 million. So in other words, 96% is funded by public funds. The top salary there is $233,000. The can't say it.
Episcopal.
Thank you. Episcopal. Migration Ministry does not file a 990, so we couldn't really find any information on just exactly how much money they get, but or how they use it. But they do receive $17.3 million from the government. The Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society has a total revenue of $25.4 million, $15.4 million by the federal government, so funded 61%. They might win the prize. Top salary of $323,000. The International Rescue Committee, their total revenue is $456 million, and $332 million comes from the taxpayers, federal government, 73%. Their top salary person is $485,000 a year. U.S. Committee for Refugees and Immigrants, $39.2 million, $38.8 million by the federal government, 99% funded by federal government. Top salary, $289,000. This goes on. There's 9 of them: Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services, the World Relief National Association of Evangelists, and then also the U.S. Congress of Catholic Bishops. So that's the 9 general contractors for the federal government, and then they distribute that among their affiliates. There are 3 models that they mention in this email. This was sent to the governor, that we could really use, they suggest. There's the private-public partnership, the state-administered program, and the Wilson Fish program. Now the private-public partnership is like, was referenced to the Lutheran Church or something that's here in has an office here in Casper. These contractors, these 9, would give them some money in order to get the refugees here and help them. But the catch is, that's only good for 3 months. So then what happens? Okay, so the state administered program, of course, is on us. And then the Wilson Fish program, they fund it, the federal government funds it 100%, but you must take 200 refugees a year in order to get that. The question that was asked to the governor, will Wyoming consider becoming a participant in the federal refugee resettlement program? Their physical impact that they came up with here on Wyoming would be none. Now that to me is very hard to believe. The recommendation from these people to the governor was to do the private-public partnership. And the next steps that they tell him that would have to be done is a letter from you, the governor, to declare interest in implementing this program, which you have that letter in front of you that he wrote. The next is to designate a state coordinator and a lead state agency like DFS, Department of Family Services, or Department of Workforce Services, to head up the program as a coordinator in the state. The development and submission of a state plan would have to be submitted for the refugee resettlement program to the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So the final sentence on this memo was, proceed. It had a little box, yes, box, no. There wasn't any check mark on this email, so I know that a plan hasn't been submitted, and I know that we haven't selected really a state coordinator. So those are 2 things we're lacking. Now, and then 9.5 is this letter here from the governor. And then on 10/25/15, I was sent a book, and I don't know if Steve Bray's here tonight or not, but he sent me a book from Ann Cochran's book, Refugee Resettlement and the HETRA to America, which is a very good book. It's full of all kinds of information on refugee resettlement. It's short. I think it's only like about 78 pages, something like that. Good reading, good information. And as we all understand, you know, not all the refugees, you know, are undeserving. I mean, we have some good refugees that have moved into the United States. But it's how that refugee program is run and administered. And having no input or no say is really the big problem. So we need greater transparency for the U.S. taxpayer and for the communities that really are on the receiving end of all this impact. You know, we have to end up paying for it. So about 11/17, I was in Cheyenne in a revenue committee meeting, and that was really right after that Paris incident. And then after reading that book, I thought, you know, I need to do something. So I went and I visited with the LSO and started a bill on refugee resettlement. I did a lot of research, and when I noted that, you know, there was 3 things that the governor had to do. He had to write a letter to say, we're interested, we have to pick a coordinator, and we have to submit a plan. So I thought, well, maybe I could attack it that way. So I went and I read the whole 1980 Refugee Resettlement Act that was passed by the federal government. And that's real good reading. It'll put you right to sleep. I guess the other thing is what we're going to see right now, and I'll go over the kind of what's in the bill that I wrote. But we're going to see who supports the Republican platform right here. Okay, in the bill it starts out and it says, the governor shall rescind all plans and agreements already in effect with the Office of Refugee Resettlement before the effective date of this bill, and is prohibited from making any agreements without legislative approval. The next thing it says is, for the purpose of this act, refugee resettlement plan means any written description of a refugee/asylum seeking resettlement program, or any commitment by the governor or any designee of the governor to administer or supervise the administration of a refugee resettlement program, which would take care of the private-public part. So, and then it goes on, the next thing is, no refugee resettlement plan for refugees to be placed in the state of Wyoming shall be effective until the refugee resettlement plan is submitted to the legislature for approval as provided under section C through D of this act, which I'll get into here. So the governor or any designee of the governor shall submit to the legislature a copy of any refugee resettlement plan. Any refugee resettlement plan submitted to the legislature for approval shall provide the following. I don't know if I need to read all those to you, but there's 6 items here that, you know, like it starts out a description of how the state intends to encourage effective refugee resettlement and to promote economic self-sufficiency as quickly as possible. These 6 items come directly out of the 1980 Refugee Resettlement Act. So that's what the federal government asks each state is to submit in their plan these 6 items. I want those submitted to the legislature so we can look at them.
Good plan.
And there's another thing, another reason to do that. And the next item in the bill says the management council of the legislature shall assign the refugee resettlement plan to a committee, and the committee shall review the plan and convene public hearings to receive comments from local government representatives, volunteer agencies, and other interested parties on the plan. Now, the reason I did that is because if this gets assigned to a committee, as you all know, those people sitting on that committee will have to ask for public comment. It will actually be put on the LSO website. It will be placed on the agenda so you know what's going on, and you can go to these hearings and testify.
Yes.
You can bring up the questions. How are you vetting these people? I mean, did they have FBI searches on them, or any question that you'd like to ask, you can, and you can have that input. And this gives us input. This gives us transparency. It isn't just somebody back there coming up with a plan and we have to live with it. So any recommendation from the committee will be brought to the legislative body for consideration. Now this would be in the form of a bill. So they would have to present a bill. Here's what we would like for you, the legislature, to pass. Then a bill would be vetted both by the Senate and by the House. So that would give you another alternative to come to the committees in the House or the Senate and give your public comments at that time. And then it says, this act is effective immediately upon completion of all acts necessary for the bill to become law. So hopefully, I kind of have my doubts whether leadership will let this bill come out for introduction or not, because they're all pretty much, you know, in Governor Mead's back pocket. So we'll just have to see, you know, what happens. But what I'd like to do, and it's because of people like yourselves that are interested in this kind of stuff and are here tonight. If it doesn't come out, I might make a call to Kathy or somebody and say, hey, let's start making some phone calls and say, hey, why isn't this bill coming out? Why isn't it moving? Mm-hmm. Because I think it's very important to all of us, and it might be a way that we can stop this without legislative approval and your input. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't, yeah. What is your website?
Oh, I'm
Can you
sorry, I
tell
wrote
everybody
that
your
down.
website?
I will have this information on my website, and also on the website I have links to just about every agency there at the state level, and you can listen to us live. You just click on that link and see how we vote, and all that information there. So it's just T-Reader, that's TREEDER HD 58.com.
Awesome.
So it's Tom Reader, House District 58.com.
Did anybody not